Vairagya Vidya Nija Bhakti Yoga Shikshartamekam Purusha Purana Shri Krishna Chaitanya Shariradari Kripam Buddhiham Prapadye. We're continuing our reading of the Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita here at Govardhan Hill. If you happen to have stopped into the wrong place, please stay. It'll be worth your while. We're taking up at Madhya Lila chapter 10, the Lord's return to Jagannath Puri. We're at text number 177. Bilvamangal Thakur abandoned his impersonal realization for the realization of the personality of Godhead. I now see that my condition is similar to his, for it has already changed. Brahmananda Bharati continued, since I have seen you, I have been feeling Lord Krishna's presence in my mind and have been seeing him before my eyes. I now want to chant the holy name of the Lord Krishna. Over and above this, within my heart, I consider you to be Krishna, and I am therefore very eager to serve you. Bilvamangal Thakur abandoned his impersonal realization for the realization of the personality of Godhead. I now see that my condition is similar to his, for it has already changed. Purport: in his early life, Bilvamangal Thakur was an impersonalistic monist, and he used to meditate upon the impersonal Brahman effulgence. Later he became a devotee of Lord Krishna, and his explanation for this change is given in verse 178, that is quoted in the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. Sometimes a devotee gradually comes to the stage of Bhagavan realization of the Supreme Person, after having attained the lower stages of realization, impersonal Brahman realization and localized Paramatma realization. The condition of such a devotee is described in the Caitanya Chandamrita, number 5, by Prabodhananda Saraswati. Kaivalyam narakayate dridashapur akasha pushpayate durdantendriya kala sarpa patali prokata damstrayate Vishvam Purnam Sukayate Vidimahen Dradishchakitayate Yat Karunyakataksha Vaibhavatam Tam Gorameva Stuma. Kaivalya, oneness in the effulgence of Brahman, appears hellish to the devotee. The heavenly planets, the abodes of the demigods, appear to a devotee like phantasmagoria. The yogis meditate for sense control, but for the devotee, the senses appear like serpents with broken teeth. The devotee doesn't have to control his senses, for his senses are already engaged in the Lord's service. Consequently, there is no possibility that the senses will act like serpents. In the material condition, the senses are as strong as poisonous snakes, but when the senses are engaged in the Lord's service, they are like poisonous snakes with their fangs removed, and so they are no longer dangerous. The entire world is a replica of Vaikuntha for the devotee because he has no anxiety. He sees that everything belongs to Krishna, and he does not want to enjoy anything for himself. He does not even aspire for the position of Lord Brahma or Indra. He simply wants to engage everything in the service of the Lord. Therefore, he has no problem. He stands in his original constitutional position. All this is possible when one receives Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's merciful glance. In the Caitanya Chandamrita, there are many more verses illustrating the same principle. A discussion of the impersonal Brahman is not very palatable to a devotee. The so-called regulations of the Shastras also appear null and void to him. There are many people who argue over the Shastras, but for a devotee such discussions are but tumultuous roaring. By the influence of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, all these problems disappear. Brahmananda Bharati concluded, although I was worshipped by those on the path of monism and initiated into self-realization through the yoga system, I have nonetheless been forcibly turned into a maidservant by some cunning boy who is always joking with the gopis. This is a verse written by Bilvamangal Thakur. It is quoted in the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. Lord Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu replied, "You have a deep ecstatic love for Krishna. Therefore, wherever you turn your eyes, you simply heighten your Krishna consciousness." Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya said, "The statements of both of you are correct. Krishna gives direct audience through his mercy. Without having ecstatic love for Krishna, one cannot see him directly. Therefore, through the mercy of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Brahmananda Bharati has acquired direct vision of the Lord." Purport: Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said, "You are Brahmananda Bharati, an advanced devotee who ecstatically loves the Supreme Lord. Therefore you see Krishna everywhere, and there is no doubt about it." Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya was a mediator between Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and Brahmananda Bharati, and his judgment was that an advanced devotee like Brahmananda Bharati was seeing Krishna by Krishna's mercy. Krishna directly presents himself before the vision of an advanced devotee. Since Brahmananda Bharati was an advanced devotee, he saw Krishna in the person of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. In the words of Brahma Samhita, "Premanjana churta bhakti vilochanena santaksadeva hridayeshu vilokayanti yam shama sundaram achintya gunaswarupam govindamari purusham tamaham bhajami." I worship the primeval Lord Govinda, who is always seen by the devotee whose eyes are anointed with the pulp of love. He is seen in his eternal form of Shamasundar, situated within the heart of the devotee. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said, "Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, what are you saying? Lord Vishnu, save me. Such glorification is simply another form of blasphemy." Purport: Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was a little embarrassed by the Bhattacharya's statement. Therefore he uttered the name of Vishnu to save himself. The Lord herein confirms that if one is overestimated, glorification is just another form of blasphemy. In this way, he protests the so-called offensive statement. After saying this, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu took Brahmananda Bharati with him to his residence. From that time on, Brahmananda Bharati remained with Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Later, Ramabhadra Acharya and Bhagavan Acharya joined them, and giving up all other responsibilities, remained under Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's shelter. The next day, Kashishvara Gosai also came and remained with Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, who received him with great respect. Kashishvara used to usher Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu into the Jagannath temple. He would precede the Lord into the crowd and keep the people from touching him. As all the rivers flow into the sea, all the devotees throughout the country finally came to Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's shelter. Since all the devotees came to him for shelter, Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu showed them all mercy and kept them under his protection. Thus I have described the meeting of all the Vaishnavas with Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Whoever hears this description ultimately attains shelter at his lotus feet. Shri Rup Raghunath Pade Jar Ash Chaitanya Chartamrita Kahe Krishna Das. Praying at the lotus feet of Shri Rupa and Shri Raghunath, always desiring their mercy, I, Krishnadas, narrate Shri Chaitanya Chartamrita, following in their footsteps. Thus end the Bhaktivedanta purports to Shri Chaitanya Chartamrita, Madhya Lila 10th chapter, describing the Lord's meeting the Vaishnavas upon his return to Jagannath Puri from South India. Bravo! Sadhu, sadhu! Jai, jai! Chapter 11, the Beda-kirtana Pastimes of Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu. Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur summarizes the 11th chapter in his Amrita Prabha Bhashya. When Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya tried his best to arrange a meeting between Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu and King Prataparudra, the Lord flatly denied his request. At this time, Sri Ramananda Roy returned from his government post, and he praised King Prataparudra highly in Lord Chaitanya's presence. Because of this, the Lord became a little soft. The king also made promises to Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, who hinted how the king might meet the Lord. During Anavasara, while Lord Jagannath was resting for 15 days, Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu, being unable to see Lord Jagannath, went to Alalanath. Later, when the devotees from Bengal came to see him, he returned to Jagannath Puri. While Advaita Acharya and the other devotees were coming to Jagannath Puri, Sarup Damodar and Govinda, Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu's two personal assistants, went to receive all the devotees with garlands. From the roof of his palace, King Prataparudra could see all the devotees arriving. Gopinath Acharya stood on the roof with the king, and following Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya's instructions, identified each and every devotee. The king discussed the devotees with Gopinath Acharya, and he mentioned that the devotees were accepting prasad without observing the regulative principles governing pilgrimages. They accepted prasadam without having shaved, and they neglected to fast in a holy place. After Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya had explained to the king why the devotees had apparently violated the scriptural injunctions for visiting a place of pilgrimage, the king arranged residential quarters for all the devotees and saw to their prasadam. Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu talked very happily with Vasudeva Datta and other devotees. Haridas Thakur also came, and due to his humble and submissive attitude, Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu gave him a nice solitary place near the temple. After this, the Lord began performing Sankirtan, dividing all the devotees into 4 groups. After Sankirtan, all the devotees left for their residential quarters. Text 1. Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu merged the entire world into the ocean of ecstatic love by performing his beautiful dances within the temple of Jagannath. He danced exquisitely and jumped high. All glories to Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu. All glories to Lord Nityananda Prabhu. All glories to Sri Advaita Prabhu. And all glories to all the devotees of Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu. The next day, Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya requested Lord Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu to give him permission to submit a statement without fear. The Lord gave the Bhattacharya assurance that he could speak without fear, but added that if his statement were suitable, he would accept it, and if it were not, he would reject it. Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya said, "There is a king named Prataparudra Roy. He is very anxious to meet you, and he wants your permission." As soon as Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu heard this proposal, he immediately covered his ears with his hands and said, "My dear Sarvabhauma, why are you requesting such an undesirable thing from me? Since I am in the renounced order, it is as dangerous for me to meet a king as to meet a woman. To meet either would be just like drinking poison. Niskinchanasya bhagavad bhajano mukhasya padam padam jagamashor bhavasagarasya sandarshanam vishayinam atayoshitam cha ha hanta hanta vishabhakshanatopya sadhu." Greatly lamenting, the Lord then informed Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, "Alas, for a person who is seriously desiring to cross the material ocean and engage in the transcendental loving service of the Lord without material motives, seeing a materialist engaged in sense gratification or seeing a woman who is similarly interested is more abominable than drinking poison willingly." Purport: this is a quotation from Sri Chaitanya Chandrodaya Nataka 8.23. Thus, Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu enunciates the principle for a sannyasi renouncing the material world for spiritual advancement. Spiritual advancement is not meant for magic shows and jugglery but for crossing the material world and being transferred to the spiritual world. Padam padam jugamasho means desiring to go to the other side of the material world. There is a river called Vaitarani, and on one side of this river is the material world, and on the other side is the spiritual world. Since the Vaitarani river is compared to a great ocean, it is named Bhavasagara, the ocean of repeated birth and death. Spiritual life aims at stopping this repetition of birth and death and entering into the spiritual world, where one can live eternally cognizant and blissful. Unfortunately, the general populace does not know anything about spiritual life or the spiritual world. The spiritual world is mentioned in the Bhagavad Gita 8:20. Parastasmat tu bhavonyo vyakto vyaktat sanatanaha yatsak sarveshu bhuteshu nashyatsu nabhinashyati. Yet there is another unmanifested nature which is eternal and is transcendental to this manifested and unmanifested matter. It is supreme and is never annihilated. When all in this world is annihilated, that part remains as it is. Thus there is a spiritual nature beyond this material world, and that spiritual nature exists eternally. Spiritual advancement means stopping material activities and entering into spiritual activities. This is the process of bhakti yoga. In the material world, the via medium for sense gratification is mainly a woman. One who is seriously interested in spiritual life should strictly avoid women. A sannyasi should never see a man or a woman for material benefit. In addition, talks with materialistic men and women are also dangerous, and they are compared to drinking poison. Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu was very strict on this point. He therefore refused to see King Prataparudra, who is naturally always engaged in political and economic affairs. The Lord even refused to see the king despite the request of a personality like Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, who is the Lord's intimate friend and devotee. Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya replied, "My dear Lord, what you have said is correct. But this king is not an ordinary king. He is a great devotee and servant of Lord Jagannath." Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said, "Although it is correct that the king is a great devotee, he is still to be considered a venomous snake. Similarly, even though a woman be made of wood, one becomes agitated simply by touching her form." Purport: Sri Chanakya Pandit has stated in his moral instructions, Tyaga Durjana Sangsargam Bhaja Sadhu Samagamam. This means that one has to abandon the association of materialistic people and associate with spiritually advanced people. However qualified a materialist may be, he is no better than a venomous serpent. Everyone knows that a snake is dangerous and poisonous, and when its hood is decorated with jewels, it is no less poisonous or dangerous. However qualified a materialist may be, he is no better than a snake decorated with jewels. One should therefore be careful in dealing with such materialists, just as one would be careful in dealing with a bejeweled serpent. Even though a woman be made of wood or stone, she becomes attractive when decorated. One becomes sexually agitated even by touching the form. Therefore, one should not trust his mind, which is so fickle that it can give way to enemies at any moment. The mind is always accompanied by 6 enemies, namely Kam, Krodh, Mad, Moha, Matsarya, and Bhaya. That is lust, anger, intoxication, illusion, envy, and fear. Although the mind may be merged in spiritual consciousness, one should always be very careful in dealing with it, just as one is careful in dealing with a snake. One should never think that his mind is trained and that he can do whatever he likes. One interested in spiritual life should always engage his mind in the service of the Lord, so that the enemies of the mind, who always accompany the mind, will be subdued. If the mind is not engaged in Krishna consciousness at every moment, there is a chance that it will give way to its enemies. In this way, we become victims of the mind. Chanting the Hare Krishna mantra engages the mind at the lotus feet of Krishna constantly. Thus the mind's enemies do not have a chance to strike. Following Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu's example in these verses, we should be very careful in dealing with the mind, which should not be indulged in any circumstance. Once we indulge the mind, it can create havoc in this life, even though we may be spiritually advanced. The mind is specifically agitated through the association of materialistic men and women. Therefore, Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu, through his personal behavior, warns everyone to avoid meeting a materialistic person or a woman. Just as one is immediately frightened upon seeing a live serpent or even the form of a serpent, one endeavoring for self-realization should similarly fear a materialistic person and a woman. Indeed, he should not even glance at their bodily features. This is a quotation from Sri Chaitanya Chandrodaya Nataka 8.24. Bhattacharya, if you continue to speak like this, you will never see me here again. Therefore, you should never let such a request come from your mouth. Being afraid, Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya returned home and began to meditate on the matter. At this time, Maharaj Prataparuja arrived at Jagannath Puri, Purushottam, and, accompanied by his secretaries, ministers, and military officers, went to visit the temple of Lord Jagannath. It appears that Maharaj Prataparuja used to live at Cuttack, his capital. Later he shifted his capital to Khurda, a few miles from Jagannath Puri. Presently there is a railway station there called Khurda Road. When King Prataparuja returned to Jagannath Puri, Ramananda Roy came with him. Ramananda Roy immediately went to meet Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu with great pleasure. All Indian kings are given titles. Sometimes they are known as Chhatrapati, sometimes as Narapati, sometimes as Ashvapati, and so on. The king of Orissa is addressed as Gajapati. Upon meeting Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Ramananda Roy offered his obeisances. The Lord embraced him, and both of them began to cry in the great ecstasy of love. Seeing Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's intimate dealings with Sri Ramananda Roy, all the devotees were astonished. Ramananda Roy said, I duly informed King Prataparudra of your order for me to retire from service. By your grace, the king was pleased to relieve me of these material activities. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu requested Ramananda Roy to retire from his governorship, and according to the king's desire, Ramananda Roy petitioned the king. The king was very pleased to give him relief, and thus Ramananda Roy retired from service and received a pension from the government. I said, Your Majesty, I am now not willing to engage in political activities. I desire only to stay at the lotus feet of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Kindly give me permission. When I submitted this proposal, the king immediately became very pleased upon hearing your name. Indeed, he instantly rose from his throne and embraced me. My dear Lord, as soon as the king heard your holy name, he was immediately overwhelmed by great ecstatic love. Catching my hand, he displayed all the symptoms of love. As soon as he heard my petition, he immediately granted me a pension without reductions. Thus the king granted me a full salary as a pension and requested me to engage without anxiety in the service of your lotus feet. There was no board approval necessary. Then Maharaj Prataparuja very humbly said, I am most fallen and abominable, and I am unfit to receive an interview with the Lord. One's life is successful if one engages in his service. The king then said, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is Krishna, the son of Maharaj Nanda. He is very merciful, and I hope that in a future birth he will allow me an interview. My Lord, I don't think that there is even a fraction of Maharaj Prataparudra's loving ecstasy in me. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu then said, My dear Ramananda Roy, you are the foremost of all devotees of Krishna. Therefore, whoever loves you is certainly a very fortunate person. Because the king has shown so much love for you, Lord Krishna will certainly accept him. King Prataparuja requested an interview with Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu through the Bhattacharya, who duly submitted the request. The Lord, however, immediately refused this interview, Now, when Ramananda Roy informed the Lord how eager the king was to see him, the Lord was immediately pleased. Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu requested Ramananda Roy to retire from his government post and come to Sri Purushottam Kshetra, Jagannath Puri, to live with him. When this proposal was submitted to King Prataparudra, he immediately accepted it and also encouraged Ramananda Roy by allowing him a full pension. This was very much appreciated by the Lord. And this confirms the fact that the Lord is more pleased when one serves the servant of the Lord. In ordinary parlance, it is said, if you love me, love my dog. To approach the Supreme Personality of Godhead, one has to go through his confidential servant. This is the method. Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu clearly says, because the king loves you, Ramananda Roy, he is very fortunate. Krishna will certainly accept him due to his love for you. Lord Krishna told Arjuna, those who are my direct devotees are actually not my devotees, but those who are the devotees of my servant are factually my devotees. Purport: Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu quotes this verse from the Adi Purana. The verse is also included in the Laghu Bhagavatamrita. My devotees take great care and respect in rendering me service. They offer obeisances to me with all their bodily limbs. They worship other devotees and find all living entities related to me. For me, they engage the entire energy of their bodies. They engage the power of speech in the glorification of my qualities and form. They also dedicate their minds unto me and try to give up all kinds of material desires. Thus my devotees are characterized. Purport: these two verses are quoted from Srimad Bhagavatam 11:19, 21-22. They were spoken by the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Lord Krishna, who was answering Uddhava's inquiry about devotional service. Lord Shiva told the goddess Durga, Aradhananam sarvesham Vishnu aradhanam param tasmat paratanam devi tadyanam samarchanam. My dear Devi, although the Vedas recommend worship of demigods, the worship of Lord Vishnu is topmost. However, above the worship of Lord Vishnu is the rendering of service to Vaishnavas, who are related to Lord Vishnu. The Vedas are divided into three divisions: Karma Kanda, Jnana Kanda, and Upasana Kanda. These are activities dealing with fruitive work, empiric, philosophical speculation, and worship. There are recommendations in the Vedas for the worship of various demigods as well as Lord Vishnu. In this quotation from the Padma Purana, Lord Shiva answers a question posed to him by goddess Durga. This verse is also included in the Laghu Bhagavatamrita 2.4 by Srila Rupa Goswami. The words Vishnu Aradhanam refer to the worship of Lord Vishnu or Krishna. Thus, the supreme form of worship is the satisfaction of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna. It is further concluded that the worshipper of Lord Vishnu renders better service by worshiping the devotee of Lord Krishna. There are different types of devotees, those in Shanta Ras, Dasya Ras, Sakya Ras, Vatsalya Ras, and Madhurya Ras. Although all the rasas are on the transcendental platform, Madhurya Ras is the supreme transcendental mellow. Consequently, it is concluded that the worship of devotees engaged in the Lord's service in Madhurya Ras is the supreme spiritual activity. Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu and his followers mainly worship Lord Krishna in Madhurya Ras. Other Vaishnava acharyas recommend worship up to the Vatsalya Ras. Therefore, Srila Rupa Goswami in his Vidagdha Madhava describes Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu's cult as supreme. Anarpitachadim, what's our tune? No, hold it. What's the tune we use? Vande Shri Krishna Chaitanya Nityananda Sahodito Godadai Vushvavanta Chitro Shando Tamodala. Anarpita charim chirat karuna yavatirna kalau samarpayitum nato jalarasam sabhakti shriyam Hari purata sundara duti kadamba sandipita sada hridaya kandare spuratuva sachinandana. Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu appeared in this age of Kali to exhibit the super excellence of Madhurya Ras, a gift never previously bestowed by any acharya or incarnation. Consequently, Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu is accepted as the most magnanimous incarnation. It is he only who distributed love of Krishna while exhibiting the super excellence of loving Krishna in the conjugal ras. Those whose austerity is meager can hardly obtain the service of the pure devotees, progressing on the path back to the kingdom of Godhead, the Vaikunthas. Pure devotees engage 100% in glorifying the Supreme Lord, who is the Lord of the demigods and the controller of all living entities. This verse is a quotation from Srimad Bhagavatam 3.7.20. It was spoken by Vidura in his conversation with Maitreya Rishi, a great devotee of the Lord. Puri Bharati Gosai Sarup Nitanando Jagananda Mukundadi Jata Bhakta Vrinda. Paramananda Puri Brahmananda Bharati Gosai Sarup Damodar Gosai Lord Nityananda, Jagadananda, Mukunda, and others were present before the Lord at that time. Sri Ramananda Roy therefore offered his obeisances to all the Lord's devotees, in particular to the 4 spiritual masters. Thus Ramananda Roy suitably met all the devotees. The 4 spiritual masters referred to in this verse are Paramananda Puri, Brahmananda Bharati, Sarup Damodar, and Lord Nityananda. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu next asked Ramananda Roy, "Have you already visited the temple of the lotus-eyed Lord Jagannath?" Ramananda Roy replied, I shall now go visit the temple." Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu replied, "What have you done, my dear Roy? Why did you not first see Lord Jagannath and then come here? Why have you come here first?" Ramananda Roy said, "The legs are like the chariot, and the heart is like the charioteer. Wherever the heart takes the living entity is obliged to go." In the Bhagavad Gita 1861, Lord Krishna explains, Ishvara sarvabhutanam hridesha drunatistati Ramayan sarvabhutani yantradrudhani mayaya. The Supreme Lord is situated in everyone's heart, O Arjuna, and is directing the wanderings of all living entities, who are seated as on a machine made of material energy. Thus the living entity wanders within this universe, riding upon a chariot, the body, bestowed by material nature. A similar explanation is given in the Katha Upanishad. Here it is said that the living entity is the passenger riding in the chariot of the body, which is offered by material nature. The intelligence is the charioteer, the mind constitutes the reins controlling the horses, and the senses are the horses. Thus the living entity is the false enjoyer of the material world. One who is advanced in Krishna consciousness can control the mind and intelligence, and in this way rein in the horses, the senses, even though they are very powerful. One who can control the senses by his mind and intelligence can very easily approach the Supreme Personality of Godhead, or Vishnu, who is the ultimate goal of life. Tad Vishnu paramam param sadapa shanti surayoho. Those who are actually advanced approach Lord Vishnu, their ultimate goal. Such people are never captivated by Lord Vishnu's external energy, the material world. Sri Ramananda Roy continued, "What shall I do? My mind has brought me here. I could not consider going first to the Jagannath temple, to Lord Jagannath's temple." Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu advised, immediately go to Lord Jagannath's temple to see the Lord, then go home and meet your family members. Having received Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's permission, Ramananda Roy hastily went to the temple of Lord Jagannath. Who can understand the devotional service of Roy Ramananda? When King Prataparuja returned to Jagannath Puri, he called for Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya. When the Bhattacharya went to see the king offered him respects and made the following inquiries. The king asked, "Have you submitted my petition to the Lord?" Sarvabhauma replied, "Yes, with much endeavor I have tried my best." Yet despite my great endeavor, the Lord would not agree to see a king. Indeed, he said that if he were asked again, he would quit Jagannath Puri and go elsewhere. Hearing this, the king became very unhappy and greatly lamenting began to speak as follows. The king said, "Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu has descended just to deliver all kinds of sinful, low-born persons. Consequently, he has delivered sinners like Jagai and Madai. Alas, has Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu incarnated to deliver all kinds of sinners with the exception of a king named Maharaj Prataparudra?" Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's mission is thus described by Narottam Das Thakur. Patita pavana hetu tava avatar, mo sama patita prabhu na paibe aro. If Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu descended to reclaim sinners, then one who is the most sinful and lowborn is the first candidate for the Lord's consideration. Maharaj Prataparuja considered himself a most fallen soul because he had to deal with material things constantly and enjoy material profits. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's business was the deliverance of the most fallen. How then could he reject the king? The more fallen a person is, the more he has the right to be delivered by the Lord, provided, of course, he surrenders unto the Lord. Maharaj Prataparuja was a fully surrendered soul. Therefore the Lord could not refuse him on the grounds that he was a worldly pounds shilling man. Alas, has Sri Gauranga Mahaprabhu made his advent deciding that he will deliver all others with the exception of me? He bestows his merciful glance upon many lower class men who are usually not even to be seen. Who usually not even to be seen. This verse is found in Sri Chaitanya Chandrodayonataka 8.28. Maharaj Prataparuja continued, "If Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is determined not to see me, then I am determined to give up my life if I do not see him." A devotee with Maharaj Prataparuja's determination will certainly be victorious in advancing in Krishna consciousness. Sri Krishna confirms this in the Bhagavad Gita 9:14. Satatam kirtayanto mam yatantascha dradabrata namasyantashamam bhaktya nitya yukta upasate. Always chanting my glorious, endeavoring with great determination, bowing down before me these great souls, perpetually worship me with devotion. These are the symptoms of a Mahatma engaged in the Lord's service in full Krishna consciousness. Thus Maharaj Prataparuja's determination is very much exalted and is called Dhridavrata. Because of this determination, he was finally able to receive Lord Chaitanya's direct mercy. Now if we take a few reflections or questions. Mahendra Prabhu.
I'm trying to understand why he equals darshana with being saved. Because he says if he doesn't see me, he came to save everyone, but he doesn't want to see me. As if without seeing him, he cannot deliver him. Why the darshana is so much and
very
important.
Personal. He's right there, and
because he was seeing him, not directly.
You're giving advice to, like Krishna gave to the gopis. It's like they're all pervading. What's your problem?
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, Prabhu. Lokaram Prabhu.
I particularly noticed when Rai Ramananda said compared to Maharaj Prataparudra, I hardly have any love for you. That was very moving because it's just Rai Ramananda had previously had such a deep exchange inconceivably deep exchange over the course of multiple days. And then again, at the end of Mahaprabhu's tour of South India, they again had a very deep exchange, discussing Krishna Katha and spending time together. But still he felt like his love was so small compared to this other devotee. It's very difficult for me to appreciate. But I'd like to appreciate it more.
Somebody wrote to Prabhupada, said, "How I want to become sincere." Prabhupada said, that question means you're already sincere. But it reminds me of the verse, Krishna Bhakti Ras Bhavito Mati Kriyatam Yadi Kritopi Labhyate Tata Lolyam Api Mulyam Ekalam Janmakoti Sukatirna Labhyate. That the only price, that's Rupa Goswami, to purchase bhakti is one's intense desire to have it. And if it's available somewhere, you should immediately go and take it, purchase it as soon as possible. And you just also appreciate that when somebody's heart is soft in love of God, one of the symptoms that Mahaprabhu teaches to Sanatana Goswami in chapter 22 is that the person feels less and less qualified. Even though he's becoming more and more qualified, he or she feels less qualified and sees all others as more qualified. So this, that kind of paradox. Namachintamani, go ahead.
Hare Krishna, Guru Maharaj. I had a personal reflection and then some online comments. So this last verse that we read, it reminded me of the verse that you often quote of Rukmini Devi, one of her prayers, where she says, this is in Canto 10, 52-43. The verse is, O lotus-eyed one, great souls like Lord Shiva hanker to bathe in the dust of your lotus feet and thereby destroy their ignorance. If I cannot obtain your mercy, I shall simply give up my vital force, which will have become weak from the severe penances I will perform. Then after hundreds of lifetimes of endeavor, I may obtain your mercy.
Meditation fits really well there.
Some comments from the online audience. So we have Christopher Stillwell says, obeisances, Hare Krishna, I'm so happy to be able to join you live. My heart is full. Jai Srila Prabhupada, Jai Vaisesika Dasa Maharaj, thank you.
Hare Krishna. Hare Bol. Hare Hare.
And Charu Smita says, Hare Krishna, pranam from east of Kailash, New Delhi, India.
Hare Hare.
And then we have Divyanga Prabhu says, read, sell, read, sell. And,
Hare Hare.
And then we have one question from Apara Gaurangi Mataji. This is a question related to chapter 10, text 119. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur explains that Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu, who is the most magnanimous personality of Godhead, distributes his causeless mercy in 3 ways to the conditioned soul. Her question is, what are the 3 ways?
$119. Do you know where it is?
I think
there it is in the beginning.
Yeah.
This important verse. This is Helon Dunitakedaya Vishadaya. So maybe it's in the verse. Let there be an awakening of your auspicious mercy, which easily drives away all kinds of material lamentation by making everything pure and blissful. Indeed, your mercy awakens transcendental bliss and covers all material pleasures. Your auspicious mercy, by your auspicious mercy, quarrels and disagreements arising among different scriptures are vanquished. Your auspicious mercy pours forth transcendental mellows, and thus causes the heart to jubilate. Your mercy, which is full of joy, always stimulates devotional service and glorifies conjugal love. You can pick any of those, any three out of there. The important verse in Sri Caitanya Chandrodaya Nataka specifically describes the Lord's causeless mercy. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur explains that Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, who is the most magnanimous personality of Godhead, distributes his causeless mercy in three ways to the conditioned soul. Every living entity is morose in the material world because he is always in want. He undergoes a great struggle for existence and tries to minimize his miserable condition by squeezing the utmost pleasure out of the world, but the living entity is never successful in his endeavor. While in a miserable condition, a person sometimes seeks the favor of the personality of Godhead, but this is very difficult for materialistic people to obtain. However, when a devotee becomes Krishna conscious by the grace of the Lord, the fragrance of the lotus feet of the Lord expands, and in this way a materialist may gain freedom from his miseries. Actually, his mind is cleansed by the transcendental connection with the lotus feet of the Lord. At such a time, one is enlightened by loving service of the Lord. Homework. Anything else?
Narangi Mataji has a reflection.
Okay.
I had a question, Maharaj. So I'm trying to understand the mood of King Pratap Rudra. He seems very insistent on getting darshan of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. But how much can we impose upon a great personality who has very categorically declined to give us darshan, to give us audience? And we understand typically that close proximity to a personality or a physical proximity or darshan is not as important as seva is. It doesn't seem very consistent with the mode of humility either. So I'm just trying to understand why insist so much upon, it seems almost stubborn to insist on darshan of, audience of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu.
Well, it reminds me of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, whose father recommended that he surrender Srila Gaura Das Babaji Maharaj. And after being refused by him, he didn't give up. There were some anecdotes about him threatening to jump off a bridge if his guru, if he didn't agree to initiate him. So there's that kind of mood. And as you mentioned, service, we should have eagerness. And as I mentioned earlier, when Mahendra Prabhu brought up this point, I mean, the king is right there and Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is right there. And he's a lover of the Lord. And he does render service. That's what ends up being what really, well, there's several points that move Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's heart. Is that, as we've already heard, Ramananda Roy and Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya spoke on his behalf. And then he was under guidance from them. If they had said, don't even try, then, and he had barged in on it with his own, using his own device or ways of trying to meet Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, that could have been awkward or inappropriate. But he took guidance. The devotees supported his desire and told him exactly what to do to get the Lord's favor. So it happens step by step. So they're different personalities. It's not stereotyped. The different personalities that have love for Krishna. And one of the stories of Lord Krishna meeting with Shrutadev and Bahulasva. They both had different personalities, different life situations, and Krishna accommodated both of them according to their temperaments. So, yes, there's basic principles of humility and service and so forth, and he fulfilled all those. But there's also the case for the Dritavrata, this is one of the great examples of that, is that if you really want this, then you should be very determined and ready to do anything. And he's ready to give up his kingdom or even give up his life if he can't get it. I don't think it's if it's insincere and immature, it will be tested. For instance, there are cases when insincere people who are immature or ill-motivated approach a saintly person. In fact, one of the stories is about how a capitalist from Calcutta had gone to meet Babaji Maharaj where he was chanting in the field, because this guy was rich and he thought, look, I have everything except for a guru. I get a guru, then I got everything, then the whole package. Not only I'm the best materially, but everyone will say I have the best guru too, because who's more renounced than him? So he went there and surrendered in the middle of the field, and thinking something like, I'll give you whatever you want. I'll build you a little place. He's thinking, what could he want? He's just sitting out here in the field. And then Babaji Maharaj said to him, okay, I'll accept you. I only have one thing to ask. He said, what is that? He said, you sit down here with me and don't go home. That's the only alms I beg. And the person fled because he wasn't sincere. He was just going to, with an insincere request, with a material desire. But Prataparudra is different. He actually had this burning desire to meet the Lord. Those are a few mitigating circumstances, so that's there. Yes, look around, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna. On this topic of 3 ways that Lord Krishna gives his mercy.
Please.
So it's hard to say without consulting the commentary of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur on this verse, but in the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, Rupa Goswami mentions there's 3 ways. Well, first there's 2 ways that a devotee can attain bhava bhakti. One is through sadhana and one is through kripa, or prasad. And then Rupa Goswami says that the Lord gives prasad in 3 ways. One is by his voice, by saying, may you attain ecstatic love for me, for example. This is an example Rupa Goswami gives. The other is by giving his darshan, by just manifesting himself before the devotees, then they attain ecstatic love. And the third is by revealing it spontaneously within the heart. So the example that Rupa Goswami gives is Shukadev in the womb, just attained love without any other thing. So those 3 ways are mentioned there. So maybe that's something.
Definitely something. Thank you very much, Lokaram Prabhu. And can you look at the commentary also and see how that matches with this particular paragraph?
Yeah, I'll look at the particular. What verse was that Prabhupada just
119, 199, 119.
119. Okay.
119.
119.
It's in the first paragraph.
Okay, got it. Of 10th, we're in the 12th chapter?
That was in 10th chapter.
Okay, thank you.
Ekachakra.
I noticed that Caitanya Mahaprabhu's heart seemed to soften towards the king when he served Ramananda Roy by giving him a pension without any reductions and allowed him to leave his work and just go be with Caitanya in Jagannath Puri. He said Lord Krishna will surely accept him. So by serving the servant, the master's heart was softened, and he kind of said he would accept him.
Yeah, he said that indirectly or directly, whichever way you want to look at it. Madhav. He has tricky questions. I got to watch out for him. Go ahead.
It's not a question. This was a text for the Lord gave the Bhattacharya assurance that he could speak without fear, but added that if his statement were suitable, he would accept it, and if it were not, he would reject it. But later he says, if you continue to speak like this, you will never see me here again. Therefore, you should never let such a request come from your mouth.
It's a high pressure situation, isn't it? There's the dealings between pure devotees and the Lord. Is there a hand up there? Okay. Damrupini. There's a humming sound here.
Hare Krishna Guru Maharaj.
Hare Krishna.
In text 11, Prabhupada in the purport, he says, one should never think that his mind is trained and that he can do whatever he likes. One interested in spiritual life should always engage his mind in the service of the Lord, so that the enemies of the mind who always accompany the mind will be subdued. If the mind is not engaged in Krishna consciousness at every moment, there is a chance that it will give way to its enemies. In this way, become victims of the mind. So my question is, I live in a community where we're engaged as much as we can, but there are still those times when, because I'm not attracted to Krishna and chanting, that I'll be scrolling on YouTube, things like this, just basic things, whether it's politics or kitchen organization, just random stuff, because my mind's such a scallywag. Do you have any tips on a practical level of what to do in these circumstances when using my intelligence is not yet so refined?
Well, the kitchen show's not so bad. That could definitely be dovetailed. Kitchen organization. Please watch it more if you get the chance. Well, one thing with the mind, randomness is non-productive. And if you're going to have some kind of relief, like Krishna says to Uddhava in the 11th canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam about controlling the mind. He said you have to be like an expert equestrian horse rider. And you pull the reins back, but you can't always be pulling them back constantly. You have to let them out sometimes, let the horse run, then pull them back. And Krishna in the Gita says, Yukta hara viharasya yukta chestasya karmasu yukta swapna babodasya yogo bhavati dukkha. Don't eat too much, don't eat too little. Don't recreate too much, don't recreate too little. What did I miss? Don't sleep too much, don't sleep too little, so forth. There's a balance, or yukta. And so if you build balance into your life so that you are planning for things. For instance, if you're going to look at something, then have a plan for what you're going to look at. I remember years ago there used to be a magazine called TV Guide. It was for people who watch TV. And the TV Guide, it listed all the programs. It was an actual paper book, kids, before there was phones and stuff like that. And you flip through and you'd see what all the programs were. And I can't remember how I heard about it, but there was some advice about how, because people were addicted to watching television, said go through and underline anything that you have to watch or you think is like important, and then have a reason for it. Because then at least there's some purpose, regulation. What can be very wasteful and also disorienting is the randomness. That if you don't have some plan, and then your mind just goes for anything randomly, anything off the shelf, then you can be lost and in a non-productive state for a long time. So when you're in a right state of mind, when you find yourself having a peak spiritual experience where you feel enlivened, I call it baby-proofing your life. Just those who are about to have a baby, they go around their house and they look for all the places where the baby's likely to pull something off the shelf and break it or get hurt. And so they move everything to higher ground or get rid of it. And so when you're in a good state of mind, try to baby-proof your life and write down those things that you're going to do. Some could be better than others, even if it's some sort of recreation. Try to have something that's not random and that's positive that you can go for. For instance, a lot of people talk about getting back into reading books. It's much better for your brain. So if you have a book to read and your mind rejects reading Caitanya Charitamrita for that very moment, at least have something that's non-random, that's not scrolling, so that you can read on the page. That's an example of baby-proofing, or at least prioritizing so it's not random. And it really does help to have a list. A lot of people have to-do lists, but you could also make a not-to-do list. And it may fortify you for some time. You may lose it, but then you can rewrite it. In other words, you may lose traction from using it, but you go back, and that's what the battle is. You have to fight against randomness and go back to some purposeful program. So there's an old saying, it's an old saying by now because I've said it so many times, but I read it in a book called Art of the Start by Guy Kawasaki. He said, frame or be framed. If you don't frame how you want your day to be, or the next hour to be, or what you want your life to look like, then somebody else is going to frame it for you. So you have to frame what you want to be doing before your mind does something stupid. Dhamrapini?
Thank you, Guru Maharaj.
Which part, any of it stick?
Yeah, I love the frame, the last part you were saying about frame and have a plan. And
try writing it down, because it's so intentional. It helps to fight against randomness. As it's amazing when your mind comes to the not to-do list, and your little baby mind sees something, wants to pull it off the shelf, and you go like, oh, that's on the not to-do list. But then it's important to have something that you're working on that's progressive. There's a lot of things we can get our minds absorbed in, like writing. If you can cross over in writing into a zone where you're creative and you're really into it, you can spend 9 months without even, somebody just slides something under your door, a cracker or something. You can eat that. You won't even notice what month it is or anything. So you try to find those activities that can satisfy the mind and get you absorbed.
Thank you, Guru Maharaj.
Om Tat Sat. Now we're going to... Do you have anything else to say, Namachintamani?
That's all, Guru Maharaj.
Okay, we'll take a break and we'll come back here at 20 after. We'll see you then. Hare Krishna.